Welcome. Welcome again. My name is Bettina Kames. I am the director of LAS. And before we dive into an interspecies future, I would like to say a few words about the foundation. So LAS is an art foundation at the intersection of art, the latest technologies, and science. Our topics are art and AI, quantum computing, biotech, robotics, really future imaginaries. And to put it in a nutshell, LAS is an art foundation about the future. What we also do is predominantly commissions. So we work with artists and develop a project mostly over a period of 2 to 3 years before we put it out into the world. And the other thing to know is that LAS is a nomadic art foundation. We are based in Berlin, activating different spaces there, but also reaching out internationally, and very proudly being part of this year's Venice Biennale with our own project and with Giuseppe at the Accademia di Belle Arti. And you all have to come if you haven't been. It's incredible and one of the highlights of the Biennale. I'm biased, but I truly think so. And what we also did 3 years ago is not an art exhibition, but we invited people from all over the world to Berlin, artists, scientists, technologists, to discuss the post-Anthropocene. What's next? And our answer is an interspecies future. And that's what we are discussing today. And with that, I hand over to Giuseppe and to Oliver.
Hello. Thank you. Is this about the right mic level? Is this, yeah? Okay. My name's Oliver Basciano. I'm a writer and editor-at-large at ArtReview based in Brazil. So I'm very happy, very honoured to be in conversation with Josefa, and yet her installation is truly wonderful, and you must go and see it and then go and see it again. So I went yesterday and I kind of went in and into this huge screen, and I sat down and I didn't know how long it would last, and I was there and I kind of lost track of time, and I didn't know how many cycles I'd been in there. It seemed to be infinite changing, and I couldn't kind of totally lost my bearings of space and time or something. You did something to me. So with that in mind, with the kind of infinite nature of the work, I'm going to ask a really stupid question and ask you where it began. Like, what was your starting point? Was there a starting point?
So, as you said, so the purpose of this installation and this motion picture movie was to not have any starting point. So it was a little bit tricky to script something with no starting point, but with a different material of references. So I knew that I wanted to speak and enter in conversation with different type of characters and landscape and mythology specifically. So I mapped the script. So basically I started with a mind map, but not with a script. So I mind map everything. So all the references, the landscape, the sedimentation process of the plankton, mythology, so many different type of genesis I wanted to talk about. And then I created this crazy mind map, and it was a kind of endless situation because everything was interconnected everywhere. But the thing is, when you're producing a movie, you're also working with a team, and then you need to start from a point. So when I presented the mind map, they were like, "No, it's not going. We're not going to work like that. We need a script." So I scripted everything for each sequences. But also the thing was it was supposed also to be a kind of endless transformation of the material itself. So you have a kind of beginning. So at at the end, the beginning was like the Ama, so one of the main character coming from Dogon mythology. So I started the narration with that, but it's not a start, it's a kind of endless situation. So you can keep the movie whenever you want. It could be the beginning, the end of the, I don't know for you, but there is no specific entrance. So you just will see so many type of transformation process.
And I think you know, as it turned out, I'd been in there like a couple of rotations. Someone told me afterwards, but I still don't feel I've seen the work because there's so many sort of infinite ways. So for those who've seen the show, you haven't seen the show because it never ends. You can walk in and you can see the film which is on the screen, and then you have the jellyfish with the sound showers.
Yeah.
So if you walk in with a friend, you both get different iterations of the work. You have different soundtracks. You have sort of endless moments. So like the infinite is both kind of conceptual, but real as well. There's many entrants and exits into the work.
Totally.
I wanted to ask you about, I guess, the nature of mythology, because although it's specifically there's a specific Dogon mythology, but obviously mythologies are infinite.
Yeah.
They're forever changing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be mythologies.
Totally. So you spoke about all the many iteration of maybe the same character you can have in the movie or the process of transformation. I think I have always worked with mythology, and I have one main mythology in my work is coming from Mami Water, one specific character. So this character is everywhere in my work. And at one point I was like, okay, there are so many different stories and representation also of Mami Water, so maybe I can add another one. So mythology is something that I'm working with, and also the thing is when you try to see where the mythology traveled, you can also see one part of history, and it's really important. And Mami Water is really important because it's also the reference that I linked with another mythology, the Drexian people mythology. So this mythology is coming from the 90s, but in the United States. And when you see the location of this mythology, and you see also that, oh, maybe the Drexian. So I'm just giving you like what is the Drexian people. So this coming from Drexian, a techno group from Detroit. So they create a mythology based on the fact that the Drexian people are the children of the slave women who died crossing the Atlantic. And then they were born in the depth of the ocean, but as a half human being and half fish, mermaid, we don't know exactly, but kind of interspecies. But this mythology is coming from the United States in the 90s. And we have this mythology, really ancient mythology of Mami Water. And I was like, so this mythology traveled the Atlantic, but it's also because of slavery, and then it's a kind of reborn of this super ancient mythology, but in a super new media technology. And I was really intrigued about that. And I think this is also what I try to do in my work and how I work with that. And in the movie, you will see that in terms of iteration, Ama is also one of iteration that I create with an AI, then photomontage. Then I go back to my laptop in photomontage and go back the 3D model to the AI to create another iteration of the same character. So even this process is a kind of endless, but I really love the fact that you can link mythology with technology and trying to create another future with that. And I really also think that mythology is a kind of healing process, and it's also talking about the lack of history that we have at some point. So if you want to talk about what's happening during this on the boat, we don't have a lot of information about slavery, boats, etc. What's happening in this ocean? Mythology arrived and give you some also answers and also other type of histories. And I really love that because Mami Water, for example, is like the history of the depth of the ocean and gave some information that you can't have access maybe through books or anything else.
And I guess it's that the mythology, like refusing and your work refusing anything that's canonical. You can't make a canonical mythology. It's sort of like an opposite,
totally.
like in opposition. Like
yeah.
the mythology fulfills the amorphous space that comes from the removal of history, from slavery, from colonialism.
Exactly. And mythology is also constantly moving. That's the thing. And I was telling you about Mami Wata, but Mami Wata, for example, in my family, if I ask the story of Mami Wata to my uncle, my brother, my sister, and my cousins, I'm not going to have the same story, because also it's an old story. So you're always going to have many stories about the same character. And I love that, because this character is also constantly moving. So you can't really root and say that I'm going to put you in this specific box and categorize you in this specific history, because also like mythology escape, and this type of character really escape from so many situations.
And the location, I guess, of the work, the space that you've created, they both come from motifs of, I guess the most infinite, amorphous, strangest space is outer space and the ocean. Yeah. And in your work, those spaces collapse into each other and sort of consume each other. Yeah. I mean, quite literally in some spaces. Yes. So tell me how you reached them. And obviously we are in the Marine Institute. So tell me about what's at the bottom of the ocean.
I think I'm also fascinated by the fact that some landscape you can overlap, because I can also give you one thing about my work. I worked a lot with the photomontage, so it's a kind of overlapping of hundreds and hundreds of pictures. So it's a multi-layering of references in terms of pictures. And about that, I talked to you yesterday about one scene of the movie Space is the Place, is of the musician and artist Sun Ra. So Space is the Place, you have this entrance scene, and you see Sun Ra speaking, but he's also in a kind of forest. But in this forest you have a weird object, a jellyfish. So this jellyfish is also, the one that you have in the exhibition is also coming from Space is the Place. But you have a weird jellyfish floating in the forest, but you don't really know if you are in the depth of the ocean, or if you are in the forest, or maybe in the outer space. And there are so many links also in between outer space and Earth and the depth of the ocean. And I was really struck by a movie when I was younger. It was Nostalgia de la Luz, the Patricio Guzman, and you have this woman looking for the bones of their relative who died during the regime of Pinochet, and at the same time you're also in a journey with a physicist looking at the stars, but they're looking for the same thing. They are looking for limestone, but some of them, so the women are looking for the limestone in the bones of people who died, and the physicist is looking for limestone in the stars in outer space. And this link was to me like crazy. Like we have like a kind of material link, and then it become a poetical link. And I really love how poetry, but also physics, and like quantum physics, and sometimes also biology, can blur the link and the categorization that we have in mind, and that indeed we think has a main structure of life, of society. So this is why I think I really love also to blur all the frontier, and I need to explore everything, and to be in a kind of unknown space, unknown, like also unknown aquazone. It's also the name of one track of Drexia. But once someone asked me, why are you interested too? And I say that I'm really fascinated by the myth of non-origin, not the original of something. So this is why maybe I'm always seeking about the non-origin and always turning around.
I mean, it's interesting that the plankton as being both an animal, a living being, a geography, and then I think you use the example that building equipment, like building material extracted from geography, then made into architecture. So it sort of has this strange like hybridity of purpose or identity.
Yeah, totally. And for this project, for the swell of species, so I was super interested about the plankton, and specifically the mixed trophic plankton. So this mixed trophic plankton is not a vegetal, not an animal either. It's a kind of both. So you can't really put this specific plankton in a box. So also this plankton escaped to any type of categorization. And then also I realized that, we have this process of sedimentation of the plankton creating the bed of the ocean and creating some limestone. And then I was looking for information and references for this project. And I read an article about the cliff of Etretat in the north of France. And I realized that those cliffs are made of plankton sedimentation that we had in the beginning of the bottom in the ocean. And I was like, this is insane. So also the fact that plankton, when they died and they create this bed of limestone in the bottom of the ocean, they're also creating a kind of, I think it's really creating a kind of printer of history. So you can find some fossils, a lot of traces of different species, and also species who died for a really, really long time. But the thing that now we are using the cliff of Etretat to build some really old houses, and you realize that in this really huge brick of limestone, they are also made of history coming from the ocean. But at one point we didn't realize it, and I was like, it was the missing point of the story of a swell of species. So when I discovered that, I was like, okay, I have to put that in the mind map, the last information.
And obviously, the space we're in now, people can make their own plankton or kind of hybrid plankton creatures using AI technology. But it's also used. I mean, it's using AI, but it's also authored by you because it's from your huge library of. Or maybe say a little bit about this huge library of. Surfaces, textures.
I have a huge library of picture, any type of picture. So as I said, I work a lot with the photomontage, but also in video. But so I have a specific team, and I'm working with two people, Sean Hart and Nicolas Pyrrhus, for years and years. So we also develop a specific way to develop movies based on my way to work on photomontage. So basically, what we do, we create our own texture for each object that we modelize in 3D. So for example, like when you're gonna see the movie, you will see that the inside of belly of the snake is made of microscopic picture and microscopic view that I did by myself because I also have a microscope at home. So when I need to do a new research, sometimes I just go in the nature and I take some like tiny sample of different type of plants, and then I go back to the microscope and I look at it, and then it becomes a specific texture for photomontage for maybe some type of character. And also, for example, like when we started the movie, we spent maybe, I think, 3 weeks to develop this database of texture. And so we did some photogrammetry. We went to shoot some specific works to have like a super 4K definition or resolution. Same for octopus texture and jellyfish and everything. So we went to different type of aquarium just to have a super high definition, high resolution texture. And also we have some plants coming directly from botanical books. So you will see in the movie it's a multi-layering of a 3D object but mixed with a 2D object. So it's a specific way to create a landscape in a kind of false 3D, 2D space. It's always moving, and I really love that. But in fact, that's true. We never use the texture of the software itself. It's always about creating new texture by ourselves.
It has this sort of incredible materiality to the film, and it feels like three-dimensional at many points. There's moments where the monster, or the creature comes, or the creatures are coming out towards you, and then you end up diving inside them, and there's a whole world in there of different new textures. When you approach a film, does the pictorial aim come first, or does ever the textures come first? I.e., you see a texture and think, yes, I want that, and then I will build an image around it.
I don't know what comes first exactly, but yeah, the texture is always there, because I think you need to have a sense of the texture and the materiality of the character you want to bring alive before drawing maybe anything. So I always have a sense of the texture. For example, one of the character of swell species is made of octopus texture, but also wood texture. So it's supposed to be a statue, but also a real octopus living, and it was a really tricky texture. In fact, for me, I was like, how can we blend a real octopus texture with a wood texture, but having the sense of those two texture at the same time? And it's always a matter of balance and an amount of opacity and everything, but it's also a matter of how you're gonna overlap everything. But this specific texture was a little bit tricky, but then we realized that, okay, maybe it's more about the drawing and how we're gonna sculpt the texture, the sculpture directly in the 3D software. So yes, it was. I don't know how exactly the process arrived first.
I'm interested in some of that source material you used, because obviously you mentioned textbooks and using a microscope, and I guess these are apparatus of a scientific or an attempt to rationalize the world, in which we try and, scientists try and order things and understand things, and then or that's at least how the traditional view of what science does. And then mythologies, I guess, an alternative way of understanding the world. But perhaps they're not so different, actually.
I think they're not so different, but that's true. I think in my work I always want to explore the lines. It's a fact. And but in mythology, for example, yes, everything is constantly moving. And but for example, I was talking about Ama, so one of the characters of the movie, coming from Dogon population. But the Dogon, they also discovered a star. It was Sirius B. And at one point, for Western scientists, they were like, "Oh my God, how those people discovered these stars?" And we didn't know about it. So in the 90s, a physicist arrived in Mali to validate and to confirm that yes, those people discovered the stars, but they didn't need a physicist to confirm anything. But that's the thing, also, like. In science, it's also a lot about validating something. You need to validate a fact, a data, and everything. But in mythology, everything is more constantly moving. And I say that because, like the Dogon, they didn't want it or try to say that we claim the discovery of these stars. We're not going to flag this new planet as you did as the Western Union. So this is also another type of knowledge, and I really love that. But it's funny that these physicists need to come and to say yes, that's true to the entire world.
I guess that the key word on there is the validation in speech marks, in scare quotes, because I guess that's trying to fix something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess the irony, of course, of trying to fix a star is that stars are unfixable. They are in constant motion, and they're also fictions, because they're gone. Like what we see as the stars we see have gone mostly.
Totally, and so maybe this is something common in science and mythology, is also about speculation. And I told you yesterday that I did this residency in Canada in the Snow Lab. So it's one of the deepest laboratory deep underground. It's 2 kilometers underground, and they do research about neutrinos and dark matter. But everything was also about speculating about the amount of dark matter in the universe, because the universe is also always expanding. So how can you calculate the amount of dark matter in the universe if you don't know like the size of the universe? And they told me yes. yes, we create a math like this for that, but we need to speculate about this mathematic calculation. And that's the thing. It's also about speculation, but specifically maybe more in quantum physics than maybe other type of fields. But I think in all fields in science, you need to speculate to have a sense of something. You need to also to imagine some new space and possibilities, because if you don't, you're just going to be stuck in the present. So you need to project yourself and propel something in the future. So maybe I think it's the common sense in mythology, but mythology, I think they don't try to validate anything, but it's more trying to giving a sense of existence and what we are, or maybe what we are not, or what maybe we will be, or what we were in the past. You also have the sense that in mythology, like even temporalities are totally overlapped. It's a kind of multi-layering of temporalities, and this is the thing that I really love. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if mythologies validate anything, it's to validate the people who reiterate them, believe them,
yes.
share them. Mythologies are what binds a community, a people, or
yes.
shared values.
Yeah.
The stories we tell each other about each other. So I guess I wanted to ask you very specifically about Cameroon, and there's only in this work, and I know in other works that there's been more imagery, but in this work there's just one moment where we see a human figure, a human face. It's part of a greater being, but it's a shock, kind of, because suddenly we've been looking at these very strange creatures. Some of them are based on things we can recognize, a jellyfish, etc., and then some are just totally imaginative, and then suddenly we're presented with a figure, a face, and we kind of recognize our own species. But it's not any face. So I just wanted to ask about that face, and I guess about how histories and political histories dive into the work.
Totally. So those faces are also linked to the movement of independence of Cameroon. And you know that this movement is also linked to forest and maquis. So the maquis was specifically for a Bassa community. So the struggle was in the maquis. So there the fought and the revolution took place in the forest, and specifically for the Bassa community. So they had a specific link to nature, vegetal, plants, and everything, because they needed to survive in this specific location. So plants became also a power. So it's also about that. So how can you struggle, and how can you fight the enemy with plant and vegetal as ally? And it was a specific moment. And for me, like those type of reference are really linked to the ecosystem I try to create and recreate in my work. And for example, so you can see that in the photo montage. So I always go back to that, because this specific moment is one of the one of the moments that look like the most of the photo montage that I produce every time and since years. So how I work is I work with a lot of archiving specifically that I put in cell in plants, from plants, and for me it's a kind of way to communicate history and to relink some lack of history. And those specific faces are all coming from UPC, so it is the Union for People of Cameroon. So it was a specific union for independence in Cameroon. My grandfather was part of it, and from a big part of my family, and it's a super important story in my family that I always try to rebring in the work and any work that I do. And I really have the sense that for sure, like they're also part of the belly and the skin of the snake coming from the movie, because the snake is also a kind of interstellar snake, is also talking about ancestry. And yes, ancestry is also about the power of the plant and vegetal as a medicine, as a ceremony. So it's totally part of Cameroon and the union of people of Cameroon. So plant is also a story of resistance, and plants are also a political story in my work, but I think in the world basically.
It's interesting to think about, I guess, the specific history, like the specific history, a political history and a political conflict and a political fight having a ecological, geological history as much as, a history of politics and decolonization. So I guess I wanted to ask you about that and how those how you entwine that and how that operates.
I think it operates through, first of all, like I talked to you about this movie that I did 2 years ago, Dislocation. So Dislocation was a movie about the war of independence in Cameroon. So for this movie, I need to interview so many relatives. So I did a lot of interview. And then one of my uncle specifically talked to me about the power of the plants during the resistance movement for independence in Cameroon. And they're like, yes, at one point your grandfather needed this plant to heal himself from a specific coupure. I don't have the word in English anyway, but he needed some specific plant to heal himself and the community inside the forest to continue to resist. And I was like, that's really interesting, because also in Cameroon we have a lot of recipes based on plants, and I'm pretty convinced that Cameroon is one of the most incredible country for food. So because like the food is totally expensive. We have so many different type of food coming from so many different type of vegetables, and I was really intrigued because we also have ceremonial food, ceremonial plants. So it's not common knowledge. It's also something that you have to share with specific people. But those plants became common knowledge in time of war and independencies. And I'm pretty convinced that also we need to continue to work with that. It's a fact. And one of my uncle is working as is a kind of lawyer for plants. He tried to protect specific plants in Cameroon from pharmaceutical business. And it's also coming from that because, as I say, the story of plants are also political stories, but it's also a story of colonization that we have right now. So to me, bring archive and history through plants is also a way to speak about le maquis. But le maquis, I can't even translate this word. But le maquis is a place of resistance in the forest or in a cave. So we have some places of maquis in France, in the cave specifically in the... J'ai perdu le mot. And but le maquis, also you have le maquis in Corsica, you have le maquis in Cameroon, but this is linked to plants. And this is a place where you need to collaborate with your community and to find a way to survive. But in Cameroon, people found a way to survive through plants specifically. And so this is why it's super important for me to continue to work with that and also to see the process of transformation and the power of that through the work globally.
And I mean, again, just to go back to that reference material and I guess the role of science in as a colonizing force. I mean, I imagine, a lot of botanical science comes out of moments of colonization. The
totally.
European explorers going off and discovering plants that people, and then sort of coming and preserving that. And I what struck me is, I guess, that notion of fixing something. So I guess when you preserve a plant, you what do? You put it in formaldehyde. You kind of draw it very accurately and put it in a book. Whereas nature in your hands is never fixed. It's always in flux. And in the film, there are plants everywhere in the film. Plants in space, plants in the sea, plants inside the animals, the creatures. So I wondered if you could just,
I think I don't know how to reply exactly to that, but to me, like that's for sure, like a plant in my work that just do their life, and I just want to keep them alive. I don't know how to say that exactly, but I'm not here to fix them in a specific location on a specific way. I'm just here to put them sometime in communication, but also you see in the movie you have plants coming from the bottom of the ocean, but also some plants coming from Earth, like oxygen and etc. And it's like totally impossible usually to see those type of plants together. If you know some specific plant, you're like, okay, this kind of contradiction at this moment, but it's also creating a kind of altered reality of something else possible. And but yeah, I think this only answer that I have.
No, that is a perfect answer. And I wanted to also ask you about the sort of physicality of the space, because it's an incredibly physical installation. I think it has this amazing curved screen. And these sound showers that come from jellyfish themselves, but then there's also so you're seeing, you're hearing, but also there's the
membrane.
The membrane, yeah. There's a membrane that you can enter and I guess feel, and
totally.
it's quite discombobulating. It's quite You come out a different person.
Now that's quite an experiment. You have to go inside, and you could be afraid when you see the entrance, but it's super comfortable inside, and you will have you will have a specific experience. But that's the exhibition. The work is. I really wanted to have different type of journey for the audience inside and through the work. So it was not like you're coming inside the space and everyone's going to have the same experience of the space. So this is why also you have this kind of sonic sculpture with narration inside. And one thing really important that for people who know my work before, usually I always have the narration coming from the movie directly. And the first time that I don't have it in this production, everything, the narration is coming from the sculpture, but not from the movie itself. I really wanted to let the narration coming from the sound and the picture specifically, but not cover the narration with any type of voice. So I separate strictly the voice from the movie for this exhibition. And we'll see that you're not going to have the narration for the entire cycle of the movie. It's coming from few minutes, then it's going back, and the same for the membrane. And it was really important to have a sense of the space, the kind of immersive space for me for this exhibition. So when you're coming inside, it's super dark, but at one point the movie and all the color are also coming from like the light, are also coming from the movie itself. So how can I say that? The movie is creating also a sense of the space. So when you're out of space, so the space will be totally dark, and then you will arrive on the shell planet, and you will see. I'm not going to describe this planet made of limestone, etc. So this one is totally bright, and I think it's pretty important for me to give this sense of immersive experience in my exhibition. And as I say, usually I always work with the dark, with a really dark space, and I never work with a white cube. It has always been the opposite, and I don't know why, but I've always been like super frustrated to expose, like, for example, only a sculpture in a group exhibition. So I prefer to expose like a movie with the narration and sound, because the sound and music also have a specific place in my work, rather a sculpture. So I really need to have a sense of different sensation coming from my work when I have the interaction with audience, and I really have the sensation that sound can give you this feeling of immersive space. And for example, the membrane, so it's a specific space, a kind of acoustic sculpture, if I can say. So we work specifically with the frequencies of the sculpture itself. So we needed with Hugo Mirvalet. So he's the sound designer who designed the sound for the sculpture. So we need to listen specifically like specific location of the membrane to find a frequency to work with before, and then he scored the entire sound from these specific frequencies. And also it's totally linked to the movie, because how he scored the sound, he really tried to explode the frequency, so all the frequencies are constantly moving inside the sculpture, so you don't even know where the sound is coming from exactly, because it's like giving back and forth sound experiments. So it's totally linked also to the sense of the movie.
I mean, it's a very sensory scrambling scrambling experience, and I was interested also, like the soundtrack of the wider soundtrack of the film is very. I mean, it's almost sort of it's not formally, but it's like very operatic in as much as it drives a narrative.
Yeah.
You know, it tells a story through the arrangements and through the composition.
That's true, and you know what? Because Fatima Al-Qadiri scored the entire sound music of this movie, and I'm a huge fan of Fatima since I'm 17. So I was so impressed to work with her. I was like, Fatima, basically I love you, but I don't know how to start to work with you. But the first time Fatima sent me the score of the belly of the snake, I was so shocked, and I realized that I was producing a motion picture movie, and I didn't know why it didn't hit me before, and I was like, this is what you're doing. But basically I was like, I'm just doing a regular movie, and I was like, no, it's a motion picture movie. And the thing that she was so, the sound is so powerful, so she gave some voice and texture, like another texture of the movie and of the character, all the characters themselves. And it's crazy because yes, she really gave voices to landscape, character, material. Everything becomes so alive with the sound, and it was like the missing part of. In fact, you can't do without the. For me, I can't do without the sound. But when I heard Fatima's score, I was shocked about the power of the sound itself. Just has a sound, and. Also, I listened a lot to the sound itself without the movie, just to have a sense of the landscape of the sound, and it was like something
I mean,
crazy.
You mentioned you mentioned reference Sun Ra earlier, and that and it reminds me of that sort of like sonic journey that a Sun Ra record takes you on. It's like.
Super long journey on Sun Ra.
Outer space.
It's totally outer space, and yes, and it's the same in Sun Ra for like, because he played with the orchestra. It's with a huge orchestra, but name as the orchestra is a collective way also to live together. And when you listen to Sun Ra score, it's really specific, because you don't have like a specific score as you have in classic music. Everything is traveling, but also everything is so precise in terms of sound and harmonic. And this is also one of the things that I love in Sun Ra work. Even the sound is talking about history itself, like, because Sun Ra was talking about segregation. Sun Ra was also talking about political struggle, but he was also talking about ancient history, like, because he has this specific link to Egypt, and I think he really created these multi-temporalities in the sound itself with all the new instrument also he used. He was one of the first musician working with a synthesizer and the electronical analogical instrument. It's quite something for a musician coming from the 50s. And yes, he was like, it's amazing.
Well, I think in this amazing installation that you get the same big history. And when I say big history, I mean, from the beginning of time to the end of time, history, and then you have these like specific narratives pertaining to yourself, to Cameroon, to mythologies, and you sort of end up rooting for the creatures and the world. And it's interesting that we started, how you said, trying to communicate your world to your collaborators. But at the same time, it's a very generous installation, because it sort of welcomes you in, and it welcomes you in and cuddles you at some points, like in the membrane. You feel you're back in the womb or something. Okay, well, I think we have probably come to the end, but we could talk for a long time.
True.
But go and see the show. Go and see it again. Because yes, never one visit isn't enough. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.